Welcome back to the Sweet Justice Videos of America. Just kidding. This is just Anatomy 101. And we are hitting the last little stretch. The way that I'm planning to do the test for you guys, I'll email it to you because of the situation we're in. It's just easier to do email, and we are going to take the test separately. So, but let's get jumping into the ankle joint. I sent you guys direct copies from my book because I could send like the pages that I have, like this one here. The muscles are really tiny and hard to see and kind of hard to understand where they are and what they do. They are listed on here. We have anterior leg, lateral leg, and posterior leg, which is separated into, you have like superficial and then you have deep groupings there. So I just thought this was the best way to do it. In the book that the school has you guys use, the Trail Guide to Human Body or whatever, it's a good book, but the images are different from the images I have here. And to teach two different ways and try to line it all together, you know, I think this one's a little bit more simple than the other book. But the other book is good. Perhaps we'll go through it. I'm not sure. But since we have basically 1 week left, we probably won't. So anyway, type of joint. The ankle is a hinge joint. We want to talk about the movements of the joint. We have dorsal flexion and then plantar flexion. So I know that you guys know this, but dorsal flexion is when you're able to pop your foot up, and then plantar is going down. And those are the two movements of the ankle joint as far as up and down goes. But then you have movements in your actual like ankle bone joints, like the tarsals, and that is going to be inversion and eversion, which I guess I should show you here, huh? Invert and evert. So to invert would be to bring your ankles in, to evert is out. You don't get a lot of movement there, and this is where a lot of injuries come from. But when we talk about the movements of like what muscles help with, this is what we want to use: is dorsal flexion, plantar flexion, inversion, eversion. When you're talking about flexion, remember it's like bending, right? You would think one of them is to extend, one is to flex, but actually both of them we call flexion. Not 100% certain why, but we call it dorsal flexion because we're bringing the dorsal side of our foot up, and then plantar because we're putting the plantar side of our foot down. It's kind of strange. It's frustrating to understand, but that's how you refer to that. Okay? I don't think I sent you this page here, but the idea is just to understand the different names of each of the bones. I don't have that required on the test, and I've really simplified it for this. It's almost kind of maybe not as good of an idea for me to do that because you may need this information, but I think in your anatomy review at the end of your schooling, they will make sure to cover everything that I've missed. And it honestly, we've missed quite a bit just because of our situation right now. If we were in class with 4-hour sessions, we could really clear through some of this material that we've kind of skimmed over. So, but that being said, let's just jump into the muscles of the crus. Because you already have these, I don't need to jump into them too much. But I do want to talk about the structure and the relationship of these muscles because people misunderstand these muscles the most. So in your anterior crural, they call crural because it's the crus compartment, you have tibialis anterior. And this is that big muscle that you feel right next to your shin bone. If you feel your shin bone and you go over laterally, you're going to feel that big bulge of a muscle. That is very important muscle. What happens here is this muscle and the fascia that surrounds the muscle connecting to the bone can sometimes pull away from that bone, that shin, and that's what you call shin splints. And if it pulls away entirely, you potentially can have stress fractures in your shins. So what you want to do as a therapist is, if they're having shin splints, you definitely don't want to push the muscle away from the bone. You want to be pushing it towards the bone, and that can help heal that connection with the bone there. So that's just a quick note, kind of interesting. Let's go down here. We have extensor digitorum longus. So again, understanding the terminology, we have extensor, one that extends, digitorum, or the digits, so you're referring to your toes, and then it's longus. So there's most likely going to be a brevis, because brevis means short, longus means long. Therefore, we have extensor digitorum longus. Why is it digitorum? Because it attaches to your digits. You can see it runs all the way down into those 4 digits. Again, I didn't expect you guys to print these off because it's a lot to print off. If you want to, that's fine, but I mean, we already had this color sheet sent out. And I guess, you know, with this as a reference, you might be able to find where they are on the color sheet. So, but again, if you want to just copy them off and print them off, that's fine. There we are there. It's lateral to this top muscle here. I'm going to move over here. These are the last 2 muscles of our anterior compartment. We have extensor hallucis longus. So hallucis is the big toe, the hallux, and then longus, obviously, because it's long. There's probably a short one there. So extensor hallucis longus, it's a deeper muscle than the last 2 we just talked about, but that extends. I know it's funny, we talked about not having extension in our feet, but you have extension in your toes. You can actually, because you do dorsiflexion, plantar flexion, but in your, and this would help with the dorsal flexion, but your big toe, you can flex it downward separately from the rest of everything, and then you can actually extend it, meaning it brings it back into place. So kind of cool there, kind of interesting. Okay, fibularis. This is something I want to make sure you guys are aware of. The fibularis is interchangeable with peroneus. You will find that on exams in the future, licensing exams. Peroneus can be used as fibularis. Fibularis can be used as peroneus. So make sure you know that. Tertius, and then it's basically the smallest muscle of the anterior crus, and it does dorsal flexion and eversion. Okay, sorry you guys, this is gonna be a little bit longer of a video, but the idea is that I can get through this pretty quickly. The lateral compartment is gonna be really short, so I'm going to do the lateral. I've sent these as well. This gives you like a full-on explanation of those muscles. Let's do this lateral crural compartment really quick. Fibularis, peroneus. So again, before I jump ahead of myself, fibularis obviously refers to the fibula, that thin bone in your crus. Peroneus, this, you're gonna have peroneal muscles. When someone says peroneal muscles, you're looking at the fibula, where the muscles are attaching to the fibula. On this muscle specifically, fibularis longus, it runs down lateral and underneath the foot and attaches to the bottom of that foot. Kind of interesting, but it helps with that plantar flexion. So big stuff. If you contracted that muscle, then that would definitely do the plantar flexion. Okay. Plantar flexion, right? Yeah. Okay. Fibularis or peroneus brevis. So we have a longus and a brevis. This one's just shorter, but it basically does the same thing. It attaches on the bottom of the foot, just not quite as far across as the other muscle. Okay, that was it for posterior, or for lateral, and I'm gonna pause right here, and then we're gonna go into the deep crus.